Good to see you. This is part 11 in our review of the interrogation of Chris Watts. And where we left off, we went long form on the dumbest thing Chris has ever said. And Graham actually had the perfect capper that I never got to get in because I was rushing to beat the clock at the end there. And I just kind of ended it. But his capper was, after they're bum-fuzzled for a few seconds of silence, instead of saying, "Chris, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard a grown man say," he's a little smoother and he says, "Chris, Tammy and I are confused," which is the understatement of the century. So then they get into building up Chris's ego and convincing him that they think he's a good man as long as he finally tells them the truth. And Chris is still in denial, of course. His strategy is just deny, deny, deny. And it leads up to the second pause technique. And this is a simple but telling example that Chris thought he could manipulate everyone. He thought when he gets in the police department, he's going to figure out how everything operates and learn the patterns of how to manipulate people. Because we know the first pause technique from night one with just Graham, where Graham stared at him and Chris just kept rambling on and giving himself away. That stuck with Chris because this time when Graham and Tammy stare at him for a minute straight, he just stares right back at him and says nothing. So it stuck with him and he figured, I think I made myself look guilty when I rambled. So next time they do it, I'm just going to say nothing. And he actually makes himself look guiltier because what I see and hear with every silent second that ticks by and he's just staring at them and they're staring at him is a guy running out the clock, a guy letting the evidence dissolve and be blown away by weather. And one of the reasons why he would just come into this police department and blab for hours, diversion, to throw them off his trail. And the longer that he keeps them busy on paths that lead nowhere and possibilities being exhausted, in his words, the less evidence that there will be for them to find eventually when they're done with him. So he's diverting, he's wasting time, and that's never been more apparent than when he just stares at them for 55 seconds. Obviously, at this point, we're way beyond what an innocent, loving family man would actually do in this situation, way beyond that. And that's what's left for me to see, a guy running out the clock, letting the evidence be wiped away. And also, one of the other reasons why he would stay is actually what Graham and Tammy catch on to is Chris's Achilles heel. He can't leave this situation until he knows that they think, or at least tell him, that he's a good man, or believe it, because at this point, he's not seeing it. But Graham and Tammy are dangling that carrot in front of him. "We know you're a good man, Chris. You just need to show us you're a good man now. We haven't believed a single thing that you've been telling us for a combined hours over the last few days. Nothing you've said has made sense, but we know you're a good man, so show us that finally, starting now by telling us the truth. You failed the polygraph, so we know you're lying. Now tell us the truth and show us that you're a good man so we can know that you're a good man." And that's where Chris is stuck. Instead of getting a lawyer or just saying, "I'm done here," he's still free to walk out at any time, and he chooses to stay and talk and stare at them in silence when he could just leave. Why does he stay and stare at them? He needs that approval from them. His whole existence is based on people thinking that he's a good guy. No matter how evil he really is and behaves, he needs people to believe that he's a good guy, because if he leaves with them thinking he's a bad guy and suspecting him of being guilty of the crime, it means he's inferior in his own mind. It means he's a failure in his own mind. He failed to manipulate them. His goal to win people over was unsuccessful. And it also means that everything he's been planning for years, the things we covered in the earlier videos of this series, how the seeds of murder that would pop up, he had no real plan about how they would grow and become of use to him in the future. But the things where he said, well, if if I ever do something to you down the road, I can use this to get away with it, and no one will ever suspect me. We covered those in the earlier videos. And also the lies that he's come up with in the past few weeks while he was planning the crime he actually committed. The things like that popped up that he would use, like in the body cam footage when everyone's saying, so what do you think could have happened to Shanann and the girls? And Chris would just pop in with, someone's been going around trying to jimmy the locks on the garage doors with a screwdriver. Thanks, Chris. So what do you think might have happened to Shanann and the girls? You know, that kind of thing, where he was using things that clearly he set up or used to make his plan work. The web of lies that he created in his own mind that he figured would help him get away with it. It's years of work, if you go back to the seeds all the way up to committing the crime. Years of work and thinking that he was fooling everybody into thinking he's a nice guy and no one would ever suspect him. And also the years of him planning this, basically, and now it's a failure. So it, in many ways, them saying, Graham and Tammy saying that we haven't believed a single thing you've said is like Chris's dream dying. It's kind of like if a kid grows up playing sports their whole life through their whole childhood with the goal of one day being a professional athlete, but then they get to the collegiate or professional level and they just don't make it. And now it's like, my whole life has been leading up to this, leading up to having a life in sports. And now I don't know, what do I do with the rest of my life? I'm lost. And it's that same level of being lost to Chris. These things that he's thought would work for years, these winning people over, he's been thinking he's superior to everyone. And now if he doesn't win over Graham and Tammy in this interrogation, it means he's inferior, and nothing that he's believed in all along for years has been true, and his mask hasn't worked. So that's why he just stays instead of getting a lawyer or leaving. And Graham and Tammy just keep dangling that carrot, knowing this, everything I just said to be true. We know you're a good man. You just have to show us now. Show us you're a good man. Because so far, nothing you said has showed us that you're a good man or a loving family man. But we know you are, so show us. And then, like I said, everything I've mentioned has been the pathological liar of Chris. And now, since none of that has worked and it's all just kind of hit this brick wall, we're going to see the compulsive liar in Chris. And it starts actually with him admitting something true. But like everything else that he admits to that's true, it's encased in a dishonest framework that will paint him as a good man or an innocent man. It's when he finally admits to the affair. And I guess this is also where I'm going to say goodbye to a big chunk of you, because this has also been the most divisive part of the whole crime, is the mistress's involvement in the crime. And no matter what I say, it's going to turn off a big chunk of you. So, but allow me to elaborate and at least make your mind up after that. Because I can see why the mistress comes off so suspicious. She is in almost every way the female version of Chris. She, in all of her interviews and just the way she comes off in general, the way Chris talks about her and what we can cross-reference to be true and what he's just making up about her, and based on what she also says that's true and what comes off as dishonest. She comes off as, much like Chris, rambling with giving no real information. Her primary motive seems to be protecting herself rather than revealing the truth to help bring justice to the crime. She has Daddy in there with her to help her through it as if she's just an innocent child. And she's trying to come off as helpful and nice, but actually comes off as distracting and self-serving. Everything that Chris has been in this interrogation. But the huge difference is in their level of commitment. and this is really the biggest difference there can be between two different people, is their level of commitment. Murder is the ultimate commitment. You take that around with you for the rest of your life. Look at Stephanie Lazarus. She got away with murder for 26 years. And then, after she's already moved on, she's brought into an interrogation room 26 years after the murder, and that murder is still sitting on her shoulder. She left in handcuffs. You can't unmurder somebody once you're involved in it. If you're married, you can get a divorce. If you have kids, you can give them up for adoption. You can't unmurder somebody. You take it around with you for the rest of your life. I don't see the mistress making that kind of a commitment. I don't see her getting her hands dirty. At the time of the crime, she was 30 years old, still unmarried by choice, still childless by choice. If she had wanted either of those two things to happen, she could have made those happen. I think everyone can agree with that. She didn't want them. So her getting involved with a married man is not wanting to have that life for herself. It's her taking a tour in that life, kind of living out a fantasy. That's what I see her doing. Because the things about her saying to Chris, I want to give you your first son, and how she was Googling wedding dresses for hours. How many things have you Googled that you had no intention of actually using or being a part of? I Google atmospheres of alien worlds that I would never want to set foot on in real life, even with a spacesuit. I love reading the novel Misery. I would never want to live the novel Misery. Completely different thing. So her Googling wedding dresses and marrying your mistress, I just see that as her fantasizing about that life with no intention of actually living it. She strikes me with these levels of commitment as someone who just wants to have fun doing something until it's boring, and then she has no problem just turning off that switch and moving on to something else. Chris, we see, is willing to do whatever it takes to make any commitment to win someone over, to make them like him and approve of him. He's willing to marry someone even if he doesn't really love them. He's willing to make that person pregnant 3 different times with no intention of raising the kids to adulthood. And he's willing to murder the people who love and trust him the most in the world just to make someone else happy. If that's his excuse, it's not really what he believed. But that's the big disconnect between Chris and his mistress, is that she was just role-playing and he took it seriously because of their levels of commitment. They were allegedly having sex 4 to 5 times a day when their relationship started. They weren't still doing missionary by week 2. And Chris sent her that message somewhere along the lines of, I'm about loyalty, honesty, respect. I don't play games unless it's role-playing, wink face. So their bedroom activities probably descended to the depths of role-playing and dirty talk. And I can see it getting to the point of, I would give you a son. I want to give you your first son, as just dirty talk. The mistress saying it in the moment to make the moment better with no intention of actually following through on it. The mistress saying, would you kill your family for me? Chris saying, I would kill my family for you. In the moment, dirty talk, role-playing, just to spice things up because they've been doing it so much, they have to come up with something new. And they're both willing to sink to those depths within the fantasy world. The mistress simply role-playing and fantasizing with no intention of following through on it, and Chris taking it seriously because we know he believes that they have this great connection where they can just look at each other or put their foreheads together and know what each other's thinking. In the same way where, so you want to come over to my house and check my macros? Yeah, I'll come over to your house and check your macros, and that's all we're going to do. And him thinking that they have that kind of subversive level of communication, when reality, she is just role-playing and having a good time until it's boring, and he's taking it seriously, willing to commit to anything to satisfy her so that she will approve of him and like him, to fill up his narcissistic supply. So I don't see her getting her hands dirty. As rotten as she comes off in a lot of the footage of her, the interrogations and interviews, I don't see her making that ultimate commitment to murder where she would get her own hands dirty. I see her maybe when they were doing the dirty talk and she was saying it, I can see her kind of tittering at the thought of, oh my God, what if he actually does it? That would be crazy. And then after learning that he actually did it, I kind of picture her like a little girl running out into the yard to play with the hose, just spraying the water everywhere and not caring where it goes. And then when she's tired of it, she just throws the hose in the yard and then runs inside with the water still running. Moves on to something else because she got bored with the hose. And then the next day is just shocked that the water she left running made all these weeds grow and choke the life out of the flowers in the garden. And saying, oh my God, did I do that because I left the water running? Because what she watered was Chris's murder seeds with her behavior and her attitude towards things. And her freewheeling, I'm just going to play around and have fun and not care what happens. And then I'll just move on when I get tired of it. She left the hose running in the yard and it watered Chris's murder seeds. And surprise and maybe, oh my God, is that wrong what I did? I didn't mean to make the weeds grow and choke the life out of the flowers. Is that wrong? Maybe should I do something about it? I don't want anyone to think I'm bad for doing that. I was just having fun. So that's kind of how I picture her involvement and her influence on Chris. I don't see her getting her hands dirty. And it's very easy through almost everything Chris says to see him making that ultimate commitment. So, is anybody left at this point? Did I turn everyone off? Well, for those of you who are still left in this echoing room, I will see you in part 12.